And welcome back to Corralling the Chaos. I'm Jess Cook, head of content at LASSO, and this week's episode is a little different. We've rounded up our 5 favorite moments from the show this year and put them together into one insight-packed episode for you. First up, we have a clip from Nancy Schaefer of the Live Events Coalition. Nancy shares why it's important people understand what it really takes to produce a live event and why the industry needs strong advocates. So let's jump in.
There's so many things that fall under the word event. It doesn't have to be a huge corporate conference. It doesn't have to be the Oscars, right? It can be so many different things, and it touches every single human being on some level. And yet we're not on anyone's radar. We didn't get any dollars. We were the first to shut down, the last to come back, and yet no one was talking about it. And if it wasn't for our industry's, I think, fighter mentality, to your point, they're back against the wall. It forced the resilience and the strength to come out in our industry. And my hope is with what you guys are doing, and I'm so thankful someone had the courage to take the initiative to put us on the map. And it's hard because it is an uphill battle when you're trying to lobby and trying to educate people on a really misunderstood industry. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's so fantastic, but why are we so misunderstood? Why aren't we on the radar? Why has it taken this long? I mean, we're a mature industry, yet no one knows really what we do.
It's a really good question, and it's an easy one to answer. First of all, I love that you say that we had courage. I'm not sure if we had courage or we had insanity, but we had a need and we knew that it had to be done, and there was no other option. So I don't think that we were courageous in it. We just knew something had to happen, and this very wise, amazing group of people decided that they would do that. The reason that our industry is misunderstood or not understood, and one of the things that we did when we first started was we started an educational campaign that basically was wish you were there or wish we were there, which was, you want to go back to a concert. Guess what? There's an entire industry that it takes to support that concert. We want to go back to work. You want to go to a wedding. Great. We want you to go to that wedding and we want you to have a really good time. But it doesn't just happen. Yeah. So our industry is an industry that has been created by people whose job it is to stay behind the curtain. Yeah. So our job, we did really, really, really well, too well, that there's not an understanding of what it takes. People understand what it takes to build a building. People actually understand what it takes to go to a restaurant and get a meal. It's very clear. It's very easy to understand it. Our elected officials have no idea what it takes to do what they do now. And they do now because of who we are and what we've done. But we spent the first year educating not only the consumer and our clients, but our elected officials, who one in particular, whose name I will not state unless Dwayne wants to, literally said to Dwayne, no, I took care of your industry. That was the Shuttered Venues grant. And we're like, well, we really appreciate that, but that was maybe 8% of the industry. Yeah. So there's no real understanding of what we do. And I think I alluded to this when you and I talked the first time. When you go to an event, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a concert, a wedding, a bar mitzvah, a conference, a run, any of the above. When you arrive, it's ready for you. It's done. It looks pretty. Your registration is there. Somebody's there to greet you with a cocktail. Your seat is where you want your seat to be. The stage is set. There's no understanding of what it took to get there, right? And when you leave, it's still exactly the way it was. If it's a sporting event or a concert, there's a lot of trash on the floor. But other than that, it hasn't really changed. It's been exactly what it looked like somewhat when you arrived. So there's a magic that the event industry creates that we did so well. It put us in a position where people didn't understand what it took to produce.
I love this next moment from Mel Baglio, Director of Operations at AV Chicago. Here, Mel is explaining how a shortage of crew and an increase in demand for live events has led to gaps in training and investment in crew, and what we can do to fix it.
We have companies who say, we'll treat them professionally when they act professional. And then we've got the crew that's saying, I'll be professional if you treat me like a professional. And so it's like the chicken or egg problem. And so I think we would all agree it's going to take us all to foster this idea of mutual respect and mutual professionalism. So I guess my first question for either one of you or both of you is, why is there a lack of professionalism?
Something I've seen in the last couple of years, even during COVID times, is that a lot of companies have had to scale down. And when we're scaling down to accommodate less shows, there's a lot less people to take on a lot of the responsibilities and taking care of the freelancers, the contractors, and these crew. And I feel like a lot of the times there just leaves gaps of like how we're onboarding people, how we're showing clients and crew that they are a valued employee and that we respect them and that we want to put forth an effort to keep them engaged. And I think that's something that's really fallen off in the last couple of years. Not that companies aren't working toward professionalism and having respect, giving respect and receiving it back, but a lot of these companies are like, we just need to get these shows done last minute and I need everyone to just drop everything that they're doing and just start doing whatever they're being told by these companies. And a lot of us have been having to take a kind of a step back to say, how do we get back to that? How do we start reinvesting in our crew? How do we bring them back on and invest in them so that they want to work with us and that they feel respected so that they give the respect? We say that in the warehouse, like, how do we expect crew to treat our gear with respect if we're sending them dirty, muddy cable ramps and broken gear? So it goes both ways. The whole give respect to get respect, I understand that, but it's about like the whole thing. If you show that you care, then people will return care as well. And I feel like that's something that as shows are coming in last minute and people are having higher demands with lighter labor forces, it's really forcing people to look and see who's actually caring about these people, who's actually trying to invest in them and bring back a positivity. And that's a really big thing that I think companies should be looking at. How can you provide that care to show them that you do care and that it's good to work for your company because we respect you. Here are the things that we do to keep you guys happy.
Next up is Omar Colom, Director of Education at Evolve Technology and a regular on our show. Here, Omar brings up an important point about the importance of live events education and how we can attract new talent to the industry.
There's a lot of people that are really hungry to do that, and they're looking for the opportunities. Yeah. And according to you, there's a plethora of them out there, which is really encouraging, which is what I wanted people to hear. There's a lot of different paths to take to train and a lot of opportunities out there. You just got to go be intentional and research it and just go do it. Don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Well, how can we attract more people to our industry?
Oh man, that's always the hard one, right? How to attract more people. So ideally in my world, we need to be more active on what we're doing on the, I'll say marketing because it makes sense, but more active on the outreach side of things. And unfortunately, we're, again, in an industry that isn't well known, right? We're not lawyers, we're not bankers, we're not accountants, we're not CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. We're the director of this company or the director of that, like, what does that do? Oh, we do video. Oh, so you're a videographer. No, that's film and cinema. Oh, well, I do LED walls. Like concert stuff. Oh, but that's live. I don't really do, I'm rental and staging. Like we're in this weird market, so it's hard for us to do that. But I think what was really cool during the pandemic is that the Live Events Coalition came out and they started doing some outreach stuff. And on social media, there has been a public noticing of us, right? Now people are aware that there's this industry that's a livable wage, right? To work in, that is to do the things that you guys get to enjoy, right? Like these things aren't just built here all year round. No, every venue you go to, every arena you go to, right? There's tons of videos about this now. Is a blank canvas, and we get to come in and we get to do all kinds of cool stuff inside of it. And I think before that, people just thought this stuff was there all the time, and it's not really the case. So we need to expose the next generation to that kind of workflow and that mentality of you can be independent contractor, a freelancer, a small business doing this, right? And here's like ways you can make it happen for yourself. I think right now with everything changing in the industry as a whole, with at-home work being more acceptable, freelancers being more acceptable, independent contractors being more acceptable by the government as far as businesses and taxes go, that is one step. The second step is to say, hey, there's this industry here that you guys love to watch. Here's how you can make money and live in this industry and do this stuff, not just be a part of it and be a consumer, but be proactive. And then I think once that kind of, which we're doing that now, right? With the XR and stages and the VR stuff, you're starting to see more behind the scenes content, more behind the scenes stuff being publicly posted and on TikTok and Twitch and Instagram. You're starting to see that more. I think the next step is to say, hey, would you like to do this for a living? Here's what you could make. Here's some possibilities. And like last year, you guys have a great report you guys put out every year about that. Like those little things, and like going to, let's say, a school, a high school or college, and saying, hey, here's some stuff that I do. Here's a presentation. Now, unfortunately, I've tried to do this. Schools are very like, we don't know what industry you're in. It doesn't make sense. We also don't offer anything that covers that. So no. And it's like, okay, I get it. Do you have production theater in these classes? Well, we have this, but we had to shut it down. We have this, and you're saying you're not theater. Like, well, we can still do the presentation there. Like, there's a whole market for theater, which is they rent from us all the time, right? So it's like we're in this weird niche where we have to make people comfortable with letting us talk about stuff that and showing that, right? And maybe this is where I don't know stuff. Maybe we have to get more data scientists involved in the industry, get more numbers out there, get more of those things out there. Blackstone recently bought out, all the PSAV, the big boys. Their PSAV went to Encore and then VR and stuff like that. So maybe getting them to get with us and say, hey, how can we use some of your numbers that you guys are putting together to benefit the industry as a whole, so we can talk more about this stuff and put it more out there into the public and make it more of a mainstream position, not this, like we say in theater, ninjas, right? We're all ninjas because we wear black all the time, but make it more of a mainstream noticing thing. And I think as parents too, we need to talk about it. I take my kid all the time I can. I'll call her on FaceTime and I'll be like, hey, check out my show. And she loves seeing this stuff. Hopefully when she gets older, she wants to do it. But if she doesn't, it's cool. But you got to see, like, as I build things and do things. And I think, we as individuals need to do it more often. If an industry of 100,000 plus, we're probably way huger than that. We're probably in the millions, right? If we all did this and shared
12 million actually.
12 million,
12 million people.
12 million people in this industry.
It's crazy.
If all of us did this on a daily basis, just post about our stuff without concern, we would definitely be noticed, right? Like, oh man, this is definitely noticeable, right? And I think there are people doing that. There's some fun stuff on TikTok and Instagram that I've seen for people that are trying to get out there and do some fun content, interesting things. I think a lot of us are we're on the technical side. We're not on the creative side too much.
Yeah.
And it's where we miss out. But the ones that are kind of both on the technical and the creative side, they're doing content, and some of it is really cool to watch. Some of it is like, hey, I appreciate the information.
Yeah.
Next, we're going to hear from Tom Stimson, president of the Stimson Group and a consultant for the AV and events industry. In this clip, Tom is sharing his thoughts on patterns and trends in the industry and advice for how to lead your clients.
Well, speaking of patterns and trends, you kind of talked about that a minute ago. What are some of the patterns and trends that you're seeing that make you nervous? And then which ones are you excited about?
Well, none of it makes me nervous. I am cautiously watching the tendency for people to go backwards. History has a lot of gravitational force. Things were so much better in 2019. Well, actually, no, they weren't. If we objectively look at your business, they weren't better. It was just more comfortable. So there's a tendency of, well, when can we get back to doing it this way? And that's dangerous because as I've said before, one of the best things that's ever happened to our industry has been the pandemic, and that it forced us to think differently about how our businesses create value and what the profit formula is. And going backwards to some of the old ways of doing things, of having too many employees because it's easier than trying to find a freelancer. That does not solve your last minute problem, by the way. Last minute jobs are not fixed by having more employees.
Yep.
It makes no difference at all. Owning more gear than you actually need because, well, it made my EBITDA look better. Well, no, it actually didn't, because the CapEx pulls down your EBITDA. So having a better understanding of what's going on with all of these things was going to help people. But the lure of the past is strong because it's comfortable. So that worries me.
Yeah.
The other thing that worries me is part of the lure of the past is what our customers want. So while I want my clients to stay in the present and look forward, their customers, some of them want them want their suppliers to go backwards too. Would you go
Yeah.
back to the big discount? Hey, can I get this at the 2018 price? Why is this more expensive? And they're trying to pull some of their suppliers backwards. And that's a bigger fear for me, because many of us are afraid of clients.
Yeah.
We're afraid of losing business, when in fact that customer who's asking you to not make money as a favor to them is not a good client.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go find better clients. So if we get hung up on clients who are not going to treat us fairly and are not going to help you intentionally get where you need to be, if they're not on your side, you need to go find better clients.
Find better clients, and also, do a better job leading. That's what clients are hiring us to do, right? Is to be the expert, to keep them from making mistakes. And don't be afraid to lead your client in the right way versus, again, right? There we are again, being reactive. The client says A and B, so we give them A and B versus, hey, have you thought about C? Because A and B might be the wrong path for you, and here's why. And don't be afraid to lead them to do that.
Finally, we have our very own Clay Sifford, founder and CEO of LASSO. Clay founded LASSO thinking he was solving one specific problem, but realized along the way that it was actually solving bigger issues for the events industry at large. Let's give it a listen.
I think one of the critical things that we did not know, and this is just me personally, just with my blinders on, I thought that we were solving a scheduling problem, right? We wanted to know who was available, when they were available, what could they do, how can I get them on an event, stuff like that. Well, the problem that I didn't realize when we first started was that it's really an HR issue, because at the end of the day, we're dealing with people. And one of the biggest challenges that we had is really understanding what all of our costs were. Part of the company that I ran at the time and founded, we had independent third-party audits at the end of every year. And we had employees in over, I think it was like over 43 states, or people that were working in over 43 states. Let me just say that. They were not employees at the time. And they said, well, listen, you're kind of have a lot of employees now, or people that are working, sorry. Are you telling them, are you controlling the work? And I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, there's like this 20 question list, or should they be employees or not, or should they be independent contractors? And we were independent contracting everyone, and I thought it was really just too difficult to keep up with. And I didn't really understand the risk associated with it. And so they said, well, do you give them the tools? And I said, yes. Do you set their schedule? And I said, yes. And they said, well, do you track when they work? And I said, yes. Do you give them scripts? Of course. Do you reimburse them for, receipts or expenses? Absolutely.
Congratulations, you have employees, right?
Yeah. So guess what? So we found out that there's something called the source of control, and that is really important. And so I said, well, okay, I guess maybe I got to add these people. Sure. Well, because you're going to say that you're going to add them doesn't mean anything. But what it does do is it fundamentally changes your business model, because you've got all these unintended costs now that are part of an employment, right? A relationship that you've got to deal with. And then it's not just like, hey, you're going to go work for 10 hours at $100 an hour, and you'll, send me an invoice whenever you get it, and I'll pay it in 30 days. Right. That's different. But the problem is that you have all these different states that we're all working in and doing things in, but have different rules and different thresholds. And we had no idea. Ultimately, what we're trying to find is the right person at the right place at the right time with the right skill at the right price.
Yep.
Well, if you don't take all that other stuff into consideration in each of these different states, you'll never have that. And that data is not static, it's dynamic, and it's always changing, which is another thing I had no clue about. And so I knew that. I was like, well, gosh, how do I solve that? And, fortunately for me, I met you, and you did have that experience. And so I really think that we set out for solving the issue, and I still think we solved the issue. I think it's just all the ingredients that came up, to come up with that solution were things that we just hadn't, and me personally just had never really thought about. When you look back and say, with our third-party audit that we had, it was a really simple decision. But they said, okay, well, look, you need to run the risk of about paying about $8 million in penalty and interest in the event that you get audited and lose. And so I didn't sleep, I didn't sleep that night. And I thought, well, gosh, that's awful.
8 million is a big price tag. I don't care who you are.
Well, right. Well, I mean, 8 million, but think about it this way. There's no value in that. I got nothing, you as an owner gets nothing out of that. All you're doing is taking on massive amounts of liability for nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And so to me, fortunately, they said, well, you can pay a fraction of the amount and just do a safe harbor. And I mean, I couldn't do that fast enough because I wanted to make sure that from a liability standpoint, we were clear.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of in thinking through like the unintended consequences, and it was really difficult because we thought we were going to lose the majority of our employees because that was not how they work. They were not used to that. And back then,
Back then, you're right.
Yeah, nobody did it, right? And so we were trying to kind of change something that no one had ever changed.
Yeah.
And we felt like we didn't even have the tools, but at least we had some things. And we had the spine to make sure that like this, we are going to do this one way or the other, come hell or high water. And we did it. And then, which was, good. But then I think that's kind of where the tools that LASSO provided really came in, because it gave us the ability to do it efficiently in a way that we would have never been able to do without it. And that was really the catalyst for change. And if you look today across the entire industry, it's completely changed.
Well, that's a wrap from us on 2022. From everyone here at LASSO, thank you so much for listening in. We'll be back in 2023 with all new episodes of Corralling the Chaos. Happy holidays, and we'll see you in the new year. Bye-bye.